Good evening. It's Kwabena here, and I'll be talking about what I learned so far in our course in communication and technology. So, after reading Ong's book, the first two things that really stood out to me was how longer language has been spoken than it has been written. That's something I found very fascinating. I never really took the time to ponder about that, but reading that, it really settled in quite nicely. But I was also able to make a distinction between subjectivity and objectivity in relation to orality and literacy. I do believe that, excuse me, orality is subjectivity happening. It's subject by nature. Whereas with literacy, it's all about objectification. It takes away from the person and makes it into a whole separate entity that exists uh, no matter what place or what time or whatever. So we still have text from 1,000 years ago, 500 years ago that we still, it's visible text. We believe this is what was written, what was said, and this is what it is. But when it comes to orality, things can get lost. It's like a telephone game, like certain things might not be factual anymore. But it is very fascinating to see how they both relate to subjectivity and objectivity. Uh, Another thing that I really took away was the metaphysics of sound and how sound only exists while it's leaving. I thought that was very fascinating. I think it explains how an oral culture will work with rhymes and using music to kind of like reinforce their memory in a way. But also, we can kind of see how the brain has evolved um, over time to compensate for the technological change that happened with man and language. So, because language is written a lot more now, we tend to read it and we tend to convert these symbols into sounds mentally. So that's a brain process that probably never happened up until language became written. And, it's very interesting to see how the brain is going to evolve when it comes to neuroplasticity moving forward as technology does advance and we kind of get away from subjectivity and become more objective in a way. Um, and going forward to the next textbook with understanding media, I think it's with technology and electricity, we've managed to be able to extend ourselves across space time. Like it used to be, we did that with written language, but now we're doing it with electricity. And it's kind of opened up a whole bunch of possibilities that have made things a lot more instantaneous to the point where, we have the power to act without reacting. I think that's what he meant in understanding media when he made that statement. So it's technology has advanced to the point where back in the day, if you somebody gave a speech, you had to be around to hear it to believe it was said. Then you would get maybe somebody, if you weren't there, you would hear a word about it, a day later or a couple of weeks later. But now with technology and electricity, everybody's witnessing the same thing all at once. So it takes away from, I guess, just that the whole space time concept in a way, and it kind of gives a lot more power to man to be able to do what he wants to do. Another thing that I thought was very important was that the medium does matter. It's not about the message; it's really about the medium. Uh, I like to think about it like a riverbank. The water is a medium; it's flowing to the sea or wherever it needs to go, but the banks control how the water flows. So I think it's very important to pay attention to where you get your source of information from when it comes to the internet. Not even just with the internet, but just with everybody. But I think with the internet, there's definitely no hold bars in that situation like that. And because we're constantly getting hit with a whole bunch of information back to back to back, it's affecting our nervous system. We become desensitized by certain things, and it's because it's just the same stimulus effect. So we've gotten to a point where I guess with technology became, I mean, when language became written and now it's become digitalized to where it's spread across different space times and we're getting away from ourselves, our subjective selves, and becoming a lot more objective. So it's something to really pay attention to when it comes to that. Martin Heidegger, one of my favorite philosophers, he described this term called enframing, in which like we're in a state of readiness, or we pretty much take a lot of resources from the world and we create these products and just have them sitting there waiting for us to use it. And I think how he described and framed it is what we're doing to ourselves and with documentation, especially when it comes to uh, just blank documents and whole bureaucratic processes and certifications and driver's license and all of these documents that you need to prove that you exist. So we've enframed ourselves with written technology. And it's fascinating because oral and in an oral culture, you can't enframe yourself. But because of how the transition of language became written, we now see that all of these things are ready for us to preserve us, and they're already there. That's the purpose of these documents like that we have around us, is to preserve us. So for example, if you don't have a death certificate or a birth certificate, you never lived or died, which is actually crazy to think, but that's who we are now as a society. And we've seen this kind of transition into the digital world. We've enframed ourselves from documents all the way into the digital world. Now they're digital blanks, social media platforms, your email, all of those things are there to enframe you in the digital world. So they're there for those exact purposes, and they're just waiting for you to fill that void. So that's what we're seeing right now in this digital age. I think people who are born into this digital age, they really have no control over what's going on now. I think we've lost our rights, our privacy rights, all of those things. There's so much information about us out there we don't even understand, and we don't know how to operate with that. So the people who are born into this, they have no idea either. So it's definitely something to pay attention to moving forward with this. And when we talk about the mind, and we know the mind is very flexible, it does change according to what's happening around us, but it likes patterns. And once the internet, once these corporations pick up on your pattern, they're able to deliver certain kind of informations to you based on what you're, just who you are. So in a way, our biases are being confirmed, and that takes us away from our subjective selves in a way more and more and more. So it's very important to look at these things. It's very important to look at how language and how we communicate. We've gotten to this point where we're almost out of touch with ourselves in reality, and there's a lot of organizations behind that, and it just ties into the unit user interface and the quantitative measures, i.e. what we discovered in the filter bubble. And I know with what I study with UX design and user experience, that's what we do. We do research on these things to make it a lot more user friendly and better. So yeah, there's a lot of data and a lot of information about that out there. But I do believe there is hope in UX, because UX is coming from a really good place. It's coming from empathy. So we will see, I hope to be part of that transition where we kind of bring communication and technology back to the self. We've gone way too far away from ourselves, and I really believe we need to come back. Yeah, I did notice a distinction between literacy and orality from the lectures and the readings that we did. I do encourage people to watch Westworld and Rehoboam. Rehoboam is an artificial intelligence in season 3 that controls everybody's actions. Please watch it. It's amazing. I've already discussed how we're being objectified in a way about how we communicate, and we're just getting away from ourselves. Once language became written, we started to kind of get away from ourselves a bit, and now it's been digitalized, and now we are in a whole different world, a whole different reality. But I do believe the answers do lie in phenomenology and existentialism. I will go back and read all of my books again and more after I'm done with my master's. But it's been a lot. It's been a lot that I learned. It was so hard to fit all of this in 7 to 10 minutes. This is my 3rd time recording it, but it's been a lot that I learned. Thank you guys so much. Thank you very much, Professor Loris. Thank you for your flexibility. Thank you for your time. It's much appreciated. It's been a crazy 2020 year, but knowledge doesn't stop. And I learned a lot with communication, more than I ever have. So yeah, thank you for the class. Have a great rest of the year. Merry Christmas. Happy Thanksgiving. We'll be in touch. Thank you.